Joëlle, you talked about a lot of social changes that have happened in the past, and that the one we're moving towards dwarfs all of those. Now, all of those are being accompanied by civil disobedience and non-violent direct action. Have you entertained that at all yourself?
I think everybody has a different role to play. So, I mean, if you're someone that feels compelled to participate in those types of activities, then I say power to you. But for me, personally, I guess the opportunities open to me are different, and so I choose to use my platforms in slightly different ways. Because I guess you can open and shut certain doors, and I guess as an IPCC author, we're meant to be apolitical and just provide the facts, but ultimately it's up to other people. I think we all have a role to play, is what I would say. As a scientist, that's not how I choose to engage, but I can appreciate it.
Yeah, and you're aware that other scientists are doing that?
I am aware.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Hi, I was just, I guess, as an artist, kind of like, really interested in kind of taking in all of these, the latest in scientific, research that you're doing. I think there's a really wonderful kind of possible relationship between artists and scientists that can really be, kind of massaged, and, so that bridge can be crossed in terms of like really getting that emotional response across. But I guess I'm, thinking about, what does it look like, the strategies for actually making this world that we want, like there's that, there's that way that we can kind of move people with the loss, but then we don't necessarily want to just leave them in that grief, like, is it, I come from out near Warburton, and there's a lot about, a lot of kind of activism around the forest and the logging and, habitat loss and endangered, critically endangered species and that kind of thing. But in the bigger picture as well, I guess, obviously protecting our forests is one thing, but, I guess in terms of, to go, just simple kind of nutshell strategies, like, how, I don't know, it's a big question.
It's a big question, but I think what you're basically saying is like I think we need a vision for what we want our future to be. What does a sustainable future look like? Let's vision that up. And to be honest, there's actually a lot of people who've thought about this already. I'm not one of those people. I'm a scientist who's been on the front line of the science. So I guess this is the collective call out to people, because if you think about it, our storytellers are the people that help us imagine a new future and imagine how things could be. And maybe our architects or our engineers there's so many different groups of people. So I suppose it's just thinking about, we need to collectively have a vision for this future. But you're right, I mean, a pretty tangible, easy example of, restoring forests, right now, I mean, plants, like if we plant seed today, they're going to be forests in 500 years. So it's an act of love for future generations to do that restorative work, and we must do that. And I also talk about the UN having this goal of restoring 30% of the Earth's surface by 2030, and because we've degraded so much of it, as I've mentioned. So to me, that can be done on that really micro scale or community level, that you're actually a part of healing the Earth in some way. But I guess your question is more about the vision. And how do we articulate that vision? How do we represent that vision in different ways? Now, that's something for you to go and think about, to be honest. I don't have the answers. And I think, but I'm sure collectively we do have the answers. And I think that idea of leaving a legacy really sticks in my mind, like thinking about what kind of legacy do we want to leave? And maybe from there we might be inspired to think about how we get there. But they're just a few rambling thoughts along the theme. Deb?
Well, this is following on from your question, because just long wondered, you hear about these amazing projects that are happening in communities all around the world, where people really are repairing and regenerating and looking at all the ways that they can heal their natural space, and particularly led by Indigenous people, or, you know, at least in many cases prevent further destruction. Has anybody modelled what the compounding and amplifying, you know, consequences, I guess, that could be if that was happening all at once, and that soils were beginning to store more carbon and to be more fertile and, you know, hold more water and therefore be more, you know, I mean, on a global scale, it just seems like that's the kind of science that could be really helpful right now. It's amplifying, it's compounding, and it's exponential, because nature seems to have a pretty incredible capacity to start healing itself if we allow it and help it.
Absolutely, and I think that it's really reclaiming that custodianship, isn't it? And I'd love to see that science done on what happens if we restore all of the, you know, soil carbon and the forests and all that sort of stuff. And maybe people are doing that work, I'm actually not too sure. But I guess it's sort of thinking about, I think, coming full circle of realising that the concept of caring for country.
Yeah.
This is not rocket science, guys. This is not rocket science. We know this inherently as humans. We've just strayed so far from our centre and from this place of really living within our limits, and we've lost the plot. And I guess some of the statistics I put in the book, like 90% of seabirds have plastic in their stomachs. I mean, let's be honest. It's tragic, right? So, okay, enough is enough. So first we need to know, we have to understand, and then we need to, again, removing the social license and doing all those tiny micro things. Because if you think about it, in an extraordinary country like Australia, where I have a little national pride moment, we've got more unique plants and animals here in Australia than anywhere else on the planet. That's why David Attenborough is always raving on about Australia, right? For good reason. We have like more than Brazil, Madagascar, New Guinea. It is extraordinary. We are custodians of this extraordinary part of the planet. And we have the longest and oldest Indigenous culture anywhere in the world. Do we not have the opportunity to be like a shining light here? And this brings us back around to the whole concept of healing and coming back to each other. And that's why I'm personally feeling more optimistic with the change of the federal government, that there's at least a conversation about that reconciliation and that healing work. Because it's not just about the environment. It's not just about the environment. It's about our values. And so I think it's a moment in terms of just really coming back to that true, our humanity. Right? So,
can I just add one other thing too, though, which is that, you know, we managed to do the impossible for what many, you know, multinational corporations think is a giant quarry. We actually got the world's leading, at the time, climate and environment protection laws. Between 2012 and 2014 were doing phenomenal. They were phenomenally successful. So I feel like we didn't lose our values, we just got slammed. We've been through an incredibly reactionary political period, and we're finally sort of coming maybe through it, but the cynicism you get, the oh it's too late now, all of that is like part of the kind of mess that it's been. But yeah, I just, it upsets me to hear, I guess people think that we haven't already done this. We did. It was really hard, and it took a lot of people working really hard to get those laws to. So yeah, you know, to get the multi-party climate change committee process that enabled those laws. Thanks, Greens. You know, but I don't know. I guess I feel that that's also part of our story. I wish we could remind ourselves. You know, we will have, as you say, we'll have these tugs, but we've been doing this for a while.
Exactly. And so I think it is important to celebrate those wins, and then we'll lose ground, and then we'll have to push again and regain that ground, and until hopefully we get to a better place politically, but we're still in that right now. But that's also why this moment matters. And this is exactly the reason why we don't give up at this moment, because really the time is, you know, the clock is ticking on the carbon budget in terms of breaching thresholds that become irreversible on timescales that are genuinely intergenerational. We don't want that. We can do better than that. Scientifically speaking, that's what IPCC Volume 1 is all about. it's geophysically feasible to do this. It's just the political feasibility, the political disconnect is where we're at right now, and that's what brings us to the social movement, and that's what brings us back to culture, and it's all like that. So I'm not an expert in cultural change and social change, but what I read I loved reading about, and this is where I hope it just sparks like a fire out there. Yeah.
Even though we've got a new government that's a lot better than the last, it's still not the right government for this moment. It doesn't spend on the arts. Artists are really poor. I'm one of them.
Yeah.
And it's bloody hard to get a grant. All the artists I know have written 3 or 4 grant applications. And maybe some of us might get one. And we can't fund these things ourselves. We've been doing that for a while. And I frankly have run out of money.
I hear you. No, I think
What are we going to do about the government? We haven't got the right government, unfortunately.
I hear what you're saying, and the fact is it reflects our cultural values or lack thereof, and again that comes back down to the people we vote in. I was just talking to Deb earlier about in the UK there's been moves to really integrate cultural and environmental policy into the one sort of ministry, and I think imagine if that happened in a country like Australia, where we could fund people to bring about the cultural change that we need. I agree that the arts are woefully underfunded.
It's not just the arts though, it's it's all the gas fields and
It's the values, it's the social license, and this is the thing. I mean, we've got the money. We saw with coronavirus that if we really want to deploy trillions of dollars, we saw that happen all over the world. So you can't say that we couldn't do it if we wanted to. It's the political will, and that comes about from the social license we either create or remove for those people to reflect us. And so the other thing on that point as well is that it's easy to point the finger and say, oh, this person doesn't do that. Well, then step up and do the thing that you think needs to be done, or provide that person with support in some way. It's very easy to point the finger, I can assure you. With IPCC, people point the finger at us, oh, you're too conservative, and you're too this, and you're too that. And it's like, seriously. When you have to deal with like 74,000 reviewer comments and incorporate that, the text is going to be conservative by its very nature because it can only stick to the evidence base. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we have flawed systems that exist in our society. We either have to work within them or push to change them in some way. And again, this isn't going to happen overnight, but I think it's about getting behind the sorts of people and change that we want to see and realising that you can also be an agent of that change. It's the best I can offer.
Can I just add a sort of cheerful ending, if you like? There's a fantastic website called Reasons to be Cheerful. I don't know if you all know about it, but it was started by David Byrne from the music group Talking Heads. And he has about half a dozen journalists who trawl the internet and find the really good news stories about culture, the environment, sustainability, climate change. And there's about 5 or 6 articles up of little areas, little pockets of change that are happening that are really fantastically optimistic. And I just wanted to let you know about that because it is one of the most wonderful things I've found on the internet. So I encourage you all to use it.
And I'd also like to say Pam and myself have just recently started an incorporated association called Art Science Alliance. We really want to make the connections between scientists like you and have a scientist in residence. We've got a studio at the Collingwood Yard for 1 more year, that's all. And we really want to have scientists come, and lots of artists, and talk and
It sounds
do
wonderful.
wonderful things.
It sounds wonderful, and to me, it's these hybrid connections, it's this cultural change, it's these conversations that is all part of where we need to go. And so I think that is a meaningful pursuit in its own right. None of this is going to happen overnight, let's be honest. Okay, that's not going to happen. But at least we're moving towards something that is more inclusive, that is kind of on the cutting edge, and it's also happening globally. So it's not just here in Australia. When you start to look out there, this is a social tipping point happening everywhere. Yeah.
And I just wanted to add that it's not all necessarily government who's going to fix all our problems at all. We have people like who are doing, just get on with it, do it yourself. Like,
Guys, this is Bridget Nicholson, who is art in some of the shows. She's the curator of this beautiful show, Solastalgia and Tomorrow, which is all of the, we really we raced to get it up for today. It actually officially opens on Wednesday, but it is it's a show that I hope that you will all come back and spend some time in. But yes, so I'd also like to thank Bridget, because we're very proud. We're just feeling so proud to have an event like this in a show that's just come up like this. It's just so, thank you for the encouragement, but it's about the artists who create the work. That's why we can do this.
Yeah, thank you, Bridget, and what a visionary. Like I said, it's a real honour to be here tonight, and I hope that if nothing else, this conversation is just, the beginnings of many more conversations to come, and a part of this new wave that's coming through, and something to feel positive and cheerful about, but also, for the harder times when things are a bit dark, that remembering we're not alone in all of this, we have each other. It's a growing movement, and ultimately, you're on the right side of history.
I did, if it's okay. Thank you both, Sophie and Joëlle, for this and fine art. You talk about the head and the heart, so I assume that the head is the science. What was your epiphany, pivotal moment that then triggered your heart?
Yeah, good question. It's like I said, as a physical scientist, I'm dealing with looking at temperature extremes and rainfall anomalies and ocean circulation. So that's pretty abstract stuff for the average person. That means something to me, and maybe a couple of people in the room. But to be honest, the heart was really the impacts, the heartbreak, the people and the places. So I talk about ecosystem loss, talk about impacts on the world's poor, and loss of culture, and a whole range of things. So for me, the heart is really the why do we care that climate change is happening? Well, we care about that for so many different reasons, and I won't ruin the book for you, but it's really understanding that we're not just talking about abstract numbers, and I think that's sometimes why, as scientists, our message can get lost, because people don't understand what 415 parts per million means, or 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial, like what's that? So part 2 really talks about what does that mean? What does that mean when we already have 500 million people living within 2 metres of sea level, and that the number of people exposed by 2050 is 1 billion people? What does it mean when a third of Pakistan is underwater from just one intense monsoon system? That this is now the new normal in a sense of a really amplified water cycle, just natural variability plus climate change equals unprecedented, basically. So that's the head, the heart, and the last part is actually called the whole. And the whole is again about that integration within your own self, but also the whole in terms of our communities, because we're just individuals, but we're relational beings, right? And so it's about how do we do this collectively. It's bigger than any one of us. It's bigger than any nation, it's bigger than, but it all comes back down to the Yarra City Council sits within the City of Melbourne, the City of Melbourne sits within Victoria, and all those sort of layers, so you can tap into any one of those layers. And I think for me, having tapped into the UN, I can't unsee it now. I can see how the world fits together. It's kind of scary, but kind of cool as well. But it does give me hope that we are the custodians of this amazing part of the world, and we should be proud of that. Really, we should be proud of that, and we should protect it fiercely, because we are custodians of this incredible land, and that is something that I think, motivates me to keep doing what I do. And I hope that, it comes through, and my love of the natural world comes through in this book. And I hope that it helps people. And it also is going to have a US release, which I'm really pleased about, because I think that the Australian perspective is really important. We often hear a lot from the US and UK, and I'm really pleased that an Australian voice is going to be out there talking about what matters to us as well, because we have something to say here too, I think. So that's what I'm trying to say. Our Australian perspective is quite unique, and we should embrace that. And I think, you know, we don't have some of the cultural baggage of some other parts of the world. We are multicultural, and we generally embrace that. And I think that diversity is our strength. That's something I felt when I was working at that UN level. That it's the diversity that makes it strength, not that. That is really where the power lies. And so, I don't know, I guess it's a real call to Australians to maybe be a beacon, to be really an inspiring example of what humanity could be if we actually stepped up. We could probably talk about this for another hour, but I will be signing books if anyone would like to say hello. But thanks, guys, for being here. It's really special, and what a way to launch the book in Melbourne, and I'm honoured to be here tonight. Thank you.
Again, on behalf of CLIMARTE and all of us here, thank you so much, Joëlle and Sophie. It's really been great. And thank you so much, all of you, for coming and engaging and being with us. And yeah, it's a cultural centre as much as a gallery. So come and have a chat, plan the revolution. So again, thank you so much.